Hello everybody and welcome back to Fantasy Football Fix. My name's FPL Phillips and this is your Game Week 14 episode of Your Quick Guide, a series where we're going to be looking at the top captaincy pick and also the top 10 predicted point scorers for Game Week 14 this week. And then with the World Cup just around the corner, we're going to be looking at the upcoming fixtures and who are the best teams to target for attackers, so midfielders and forwards, and also a defensive point of view as well. So defenders and keepers, every position covered for players you should be bringing into your team for these next 3 weeks before we get our unlimited transfers for the World Cup break. So without any more messing, let's get into it, shall we? And kick things off with what's going to be quite a short captaincy discussion. So with the captaincy this week, it is really hard to look away from Erling Haaland at the moment, but I've put him up against Mohamed Salah and Gabriel Jesus as well. Salah's form at the moment has been pretty shocking for those who brought him in after the Manchester City fixture. I've been disappointed with him in the last 2 games. People who captained him in the most recent game week getting particularly unlucky with a blank against Nottingham Forest whilst Haaland picked up 2 goals. So it is very, very difficult to go against Erling Haaland and get the captaincy right without taking a very, very substantial risk in FPL at the moment. And the stats do back that up. If you look at the very bottom 2 rows of the table you can see on screen right now, the expected goals of Manchester City as a team is way ahead of many other teams and every other team in the Premier League. And expected FPL points of a player, Erling Haaland, 8.71. So not the highest we've seen, but over the course of the season, that is an absolutely mind-blowing statistic. Looking and comparing him with Salah and Jesus, who are well-recognised good FPL assets generally, that is a mind-watering figure. So Erling Haaland has just got to be your captain, is basically the summary. There's not much I need to do to prove that to you. In terms of opponents this week, Nottingham Forest do look like the best fixture for Arsenal. So if you've got Jesus, maybe he's the one that you could argue could be a differential pick this week. He is actually outscoring Erling Haaland on predicted points for Fantasy Football Fix, only 0.1 between himself and Erling Haaland though. The ownership also is going to go in favour of Erling Haaland, and the most experienced FPL managers are going to be captaining him for that away trip against Leicester, who have been keeping clean sheets recently, and their expected goals against doesn't look as bad as it has over some game weeks this season. But at the moment, you have to captain Erling Haaland in my opinion. And yeah, just stick the armband on him, go safe. I know it's a bit boring, it's not very exciting. If you want a differential punt, feel free to go for it, but I wouldn't recommend personally. If we look at the top 10 predicted point scorers in total, it's Jesus and Haaland, who we mentioned, are at the top with Salah down in 3rd, but the rest of the top 10 is made up by quite a few Arsenal and Liverpool players, surprisingly, still making it into it despite their poor form as of late. The Martinelli and Saka, they're both on 6.3 predicted points, with Darwin and Harry Kane, the 2 forward options, making it into the top 10 alongside Haaland and Jesus, with 5.7 and 5.6 for them apiece. Trent's also on 5.6 predicted points for this week and should be good to go for the next couple of games given that he's had his rest. But at the moment, it's hard to justify spending so much money on a premium defender from Liverpool. De Bruyne and Alisson in there as well, with De Bruyne making people who sold for Foden punished in Game Week 13 with that goal for him in Manchester City's victory. So yeah, De Bruyne at the moment looking like a good option still. That's unsurprising. I personally and many others just thought there would be more value in Foden. Quite shocked that he got benched after 10 consecutive league starts, but hopefully that should be all the benching he's going to get up until the World Cup. So we're yet to see if those moves are going to pay off for those of them who made it. So a pretty underwhelming top 10 predicted points scorers, I would say, in total, meaning that this might be the week to take a few differential punts. When we look at this game week in isolation and over the next 3 game weeks as a whole, we're going to take a look now at the fixtures to target and players I would recommend bringing in from some of these teams. So as Manchester City, who are top for attacking fixtures, we know we need a triple up from there, really. Most people will have Erling Haaland and Cancelo plus one other in their team already, so going with De Bruyne or Foden seems to be a very good strategy there. You don't know me to tell you this if you're concentrating on FPL at the moment. Everton are also in there as well, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin with quite a quick return to the starting 11 for Everton. Frank Lampard didn't keep it too quiet, but he wasn't too positive about him either. Coming back into the 11, we know how injury prone he is, so it's always a risk going with Calvert-Lewin when you never know if he's actually going to be starting for you at the weekend. But the fixtures over the next 3 do look very nice for Everton, with Fulham away, Leicester at home, and then finally Bournemouth away in the last game before the winter break. Liverpool are down there in 3rd, so despite facing Spurs, they're still very much near the top 5, or inside the top 5 for attacking fixtures. The Tottenham is that game in Game Week 15, but either side of that, they're facing Leeds and Southampton, which do look like pretty good fixtures that you can target right now. West Ham are also in here. They've got a tougher fixture this week in game week 14 going up against Manchester United, which would be the point where I think a lot of Bowen owners are looking to sell if they do own the Hammers man. He looks like he's been taken off penalties. He came out with some comments saying that after his miss against Liverpool, he's not going to be taking those anymore. And that was quite a big selling point of going for Jarrod Bowen, was that West Ham have actually been getting quite a lot of penalties as of late, missing one and then being substituted off before the one yesterday, which it seems he wouldn't have taken anyway, is a bit unlucky for owners. So with that selling point gone, I think it might be time to move on Bowen with some very tempting options around a similar price point, including Bukayo Saka. Arsenal aren't actually making it onto this attacking top 5, but they do face Nottingham Forest this week. After that, the next 2 fixtures aren't the easiest, which I think is what's pulling them outside of the top 5 here. But West Ham have 2 home games after that fixture away at Old Trafford, with Crystal Palace and Leicester their opponents for those matches, and they have looked pretty good at home recently, especially defensively. They've been much improved, so maybe even going for someone like an Aaron Cresswell or Zuma, who grabbed a goal in game week 13, could be the way to go. And then finally, rounding up the top 5 is Crystal Palace, who face Southampton, Nottingham Forest and West Ham in the next 3 fixtures. So some same teams that we've seen the other teams in these top 5 are playing. From the Crystal Palace, we're looking at Zaha, of course, who might be one that people are looking to ship out rather than bring in right now. Edouard, who seems to have nailed his spot as the starting striker, could be a cheap forward option if you can't quite afford to stretch to someone else or need an option that you're downgrading a different forward to. But at the moment, I'd be looking to bring in players from slightly different teams than going for Crystal Palace this week. But defensively, they could even look pretty solid, and we'll see them just over on the right-hand side when we take a look here. They're third, you can see, for defensive fixture difficulty. So starting Anderson this week looks like a pretty good shout, as it does in game week 16 when they play Nottingham Forest, despite that being an away fixture. The game week 15 fixture for Crystal Palace against West Ham does look like the toughest of the 3. As mentioned, at the London Stadium, West Ham have been playing very well recently, so I'm not sure I'd back them to grab a clean sheet in that fixture. But over the next 3, you could say there's definitely an argument for starting Palace defenders in 2 of those 3 games. But top of the defensive fixture difficulty, it is going to be Arsenal, despite facing Chelsea, which is a tough game in game week 15. Either side of that, they've got some fantastic games for clean sheets, and that's against Nottingham Forest and against Wolves as well. Ben White's a big candidate and a good option, I think, to go for. He even picked up an assist in game week 13. He's not at the best underlying data, and his assists don't normally come from spectacular crosses or anything like that. But Ben White, a very nice option to go for. Very cheap as well, given that Saliba's price rises have taken him all the way up to matching Gabriel now pretty much. And also, one thing to be careful of with Saliba is he is on 4 yellow cards, only 1 yellow card away from a suspension. Gabriel, and then you could go for another Arsenal defender. They're also options, but Ben White at the moment just looks like the cheapest, safest option to go for. Nailed starter pretty much as well, so I'd go for Ben White from there. Brighton, you could go for Dunk. We always know he's an option. And then the rest of the top 5 is made up by Brentford and Tottenham down there in 4th and 5th. I wouldn't be bringing any Brentford defenders. I think Raya alone in goal is enough if you have him. He's been getting some monster hauls recently, so congrats to any owners. And then finally, Tottenham. I think it's just too risky to go with a Doherty or go with a Perisic right now. If you have them and look at the predicted lineups and you can see that Perisic and Doherty are likely to start, then one more week it could be for them for that game against Bournemouth, which looks like a nice fixture. But after that, they've got Liverpool, which is a tough game, and then Leeds, which is a nice fixture. But once again, it's just too hard to judge the rotation with them right now at Spurs, so I would avoid bringing in any Spurs defenders into your team. Dyer's going to be rotation proof, but I think with a Spurs defender, you're looking for that attacking output, which you would have got in one of the wing backs in that system. So yeah, that's going to wrap up the quick guide to game week 14. Let me know if you agree with my player recommendations from this list. My captaincy of Erling Haaland's pretty obvious. And what do you make of the top 10 predicted point scorers for this game week? Do you agree or do you disagree? Because I feel like there might be some players in there who might be a bit of a shock to see featured in the top 10 this week. So let me know down below in the comments. I'll be sure to reply to each and every one of you. And I'll see you very soon for Eddie versus the algorithm, which will be coming very shortly. See you soon. Goodbye.